Turkey's foreign minister said, several red lines have been crossed. We've got McCain saying that without U.S. response, that instead of a red line, that Assad is looking really at a green light here because we've seen him use chemical weapons in the past. So are we at least reaching a tipping point with Syria here?
Well, let me be crystal clear here. People around the world, including many of the people you mentioned, but also people living in countries around the world, have woken up this morning, have seen yesterday, photos, videos that many of us have seen that shock the consciousness and anyone would see as beyond the pale, which includes coordinating and cooperating with our counterparts around the world to get to the bottom of the facts on the ground.
So if they determine that, beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was the regime that was using the chemical weapons, is this then another red line that's been crossed?
Well, the red line has been clear. I know there's been some confusion about this. The red line is the use of CW, the use of chemical weapons. That was crossed a couple of months ago. The president took action, which we talked about at the time. Well, as I mentioned, we're still focused on nailing down the facts. The intel community is focused on that. The administration is focused on that. In the meetings with the national security
team. But the U.S. didn't take any action the first time when they decided that...
We did take action. We're not going to outline the inventory of what we did. That remains the same as it was a couple of months ago.
Are there people within the administration who are pushing for more action to be taken? Yes. Is Congress split? Yes. Or is the Defense Department going one way and state another? What is the State Department's view on taking action at this point, since we've just seen another incident?
I'm not going to outline the conversations, the private conversations that are happening, what helps advance our interests in Syria, and certainly the crossing of a red line would be part of that calculus and part of that decision. But there's a range of options that are being discussed.
Is it fair to assume that if it's been determined by a reasonable amount of intelligence that the red line was crossed again, that the White House would take steps that would be more, I guess, forceful is the word, or more transparent than what was taken the first time several months ago?
Well, I don't want to predict what the White House may or may not do, which I'm sure you understand, but certainly this would be an outrageous escalation of chemical weapons use if the facts are found to be true. And the president has a range of options to consider, options that we've done or haven't done in the past.
You stated earlier that you weren't going to inventory the actions the Obama administration took after the last finding that chemical weapons were in fact used and that the president's red line was crossed. Mm-hmm. Can you at least assure us that on the basis of the actions that the U.S. did take thereafter, you are confident that Assad himself or the Assad regime somehow felt the impact of the actions the U.S. took?
Well, I can't speak on their behalf, James. I understand certainly why you're asking. But as I've talked about before, the United States is a piece of the pie. We're not the only piece of the pie. That's why we work with our counterparts around the world.
There are ways, tangible ways, without inhabiting the mind of the Assad family or regime, in which we can discern as an objective fact that your policies are having an impact in one way or another, whether it's territorial gain or however you want to measure it. So you are asserting to us without much specificity that you took certain actions after the last time it was determined that the red line was crossed. You don't want to catalog what those actions were. I'm not just asking you for some assurance that they had an impact. Are you able to provide that?
Well, James, I think it depends on how you measure the impact. There are a number of steps and a range of steps that we've taken. We've worked with counterparts.
Has that had an impact? That's what I'm asking you. Are you able to tell us that that's had some impact, this escalation in scale and scope of the aid?
Well, as you know, since March, there's also been other factors that you failed to reference, which include the influx of Hezbollah, Iran, other foreign fighters that we've said many times have strengthened the hand of the regime.
Where exactly was Ambassador Power that she could not take part in this Emergency Security Council session? Well, where exactly was she?
I think the UN has spoken to this, but since you asked, and I like to be transparent as possible, Ambassador Power is on a prearranged trip. She did not attend the consultations in person yesterday, as you know. She has secure communications, as any leader has, and has been in constant contact with her staff and the White House.
Is she on vacation?
I don't have any more details for you. I'd send you to the UN for her schedule.
Yeah, if I take you back early in the Syria crisis, from that podium, it was asserted that you will know when the Syrian regime used chemical weapons. I mean, those were the words. We will know, without a shadow of a doubt. But the impression we're getting now is that you are not sure. You don't really have independent intel or independent sources that allow you to determine that the Syrians did use chemical weapons. So do you know exactly that they used them or how they used them, or you don't know?
We're working to nail that down as we speak, and we're working urgently to gather additional information.
So you don't have independent sources that can prove to you beyond the shadow of a doubt.
I think I
that they're
stated
futile.
near the beginning, Said,
Right.
but let me repeat this, that we don't at this point, I'm not able at this point to conclusively, we've not conclusively determined at this point. But obviously, that work is continuing. On South Asia, well, let's finish Syria, and then we'll go right to you. Go ahead.
Are you concerned at all that the credibility of the President of the United States, that there's an issue here that the President, we've all agreed that a red line has been crossed, and he said that this would result in a game change. You've said a few months ago you've expanded the scale and scope of the aid, but now it's a few months later, we're still seeing these different events happen, and yet to the public eye it seems as nothing has actually changed. There hasn't been a game change that the President has wanted.
Well, let me try to unravel some of your questions. Just to reiterate, a couple of months ago, I think it was 3 months ago, the administration made the announcement that the red line had been crossed. The red line has always been the use of chemical weapons. At that time, we made decisions to expand the scale and scope of our aid. For reasons I'm not going to outline here, we can't go into the inventory on that. We have never been able to, and I'm not able to do that for you today.
You're unwilling to tell us where Ambassador Power was. There's no dishonor in having had a scheduled vacation, if that's the case.
She had a previously scheduled trip. I don't
Where?
think I need to go into more detail from here. And you're welcome to call the United Nations, where she's the ambassador.
You were willing to read out a certain set of facts related to this. Why do you stop at this?
I have no more for you on this.
Do you have a reliable death toll right now?
Well, we've seen, I know there's been a range of reports. The most recent estimates we have seen range from 1,000 to 1,800, which is obviously a broad range. Do we have any more in Syria? Okay, South Asia?